Well, hello and welcome. This is a beautiful room of wonderful people. Isn't this fantastic? Enjoy some lunch and listen and learn together. It's going to be fantastic. My name is Tamara Bauer. I work here at the Staley School of Leadership, and I also have the privilege of being the chair for the What Matters to Me and Why lecture series. We are so appreciative to the people here in this room today and also those that are joining us virtually. We have quite a large group online as well. So hello in cyberspace. So the What Matters to Me and Why series is a community event. It's designed to build and strengthen bonds between people who teach, learn, and work together daily. This event is one where we can foster understanding of how each of us embraces our individual values, but also our collective K-State values. It's a space where we can come together and learn from one another. The What Matters to Me and Why Speakers series is sponsored by the Staley School of Leadership and supported by a cross-campus planning committee whose names appear here on the screen. If you're here in the room, would you please stand so we can thank you for your time and service? I would also like to invite any previous speakers for the What Matters to Me and Why speaker series. We've been doing this for about 7 years, so please stand. I see a couple names, David, Christy, Dean Lane. So today is really about stories, and we each have stories to tell, stories that reflect our life experiences, our values, and our lessons learned. We like to share those stories and life experiences because they serve as pivotal moments, marking instances when we encounter challenges, made decisions, witnessed outcomes, or gleaned insights. As we share stories with others, both speakers and as listeners, we have the opportunity to learn more about what matters most. And we work to build and strengthen our community. So today we are honored to hear the story of Sally Linton, our K-State First Lady. And to help introduce Sally, I would like to invite a friend and K-Stater, Mary Ice, to the podium.
Thanks, Tamara. I am so excited to be with you today. This is an amazing turnout, and I just can't thank all of you enough for taking time to come over and hear some of the great things Sally has to say. I had the privilege of meeting Sally early on in President Linton's presidency, and I would like to say, as great as we think he is, she's also great and stands alone. I am so impressed with her. I had the opportunity a little over a year ago to hear her speak to a local organization regarding brain health. That was their theme for the year. And I can't tell you how much it meant for me to see the presentation she gave and know that Sally is Sally. She isn't just our first lady. She isn't just someone's mom. Sally is an entirely wonderful person, and she has a lot to give, and I am excited to have her share it with you today. So I would like for you to warmly welcome one of my dearest friends. I am very happy to say that about her, and I know she has a lot of exciting things to share with you today. So enjoy your lunch, and thank you for allowing me to be here.
And then do I just hit this one? Okay, hello, everybody. I'm curious on who everybody, like where you're from. So who all are faculty or staff here at the university? Could you raise your hand? Okay. What about students? Okay. And then community members. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. Very excited to kind of walk you through my winding journey and stories that go along with it, and then leave some time for questions at the end. So I titled this A Journey of Self-Discovery. So my journey, like Mary said, I have multiple roles, or that's how I consider it. I'm a mom of 2 wonderful kids, a sophomore in college at UNC Chapel Hill. She decided to stay in North Carolina because she did not want to share a campus with Dad. She wanted her own space, which I get, and she's doing really well there. Our son is a senior in high school, and he is actually registered as a homeschooler, but he takes all of his classes on campus at K-State. So it's been a wonderful experience for him in a slow transition into college to make things as smooth as possible. I'm also a spouse. You all have probably met my husband. We've had a lot of changes throughout our life and shifts, and but our partnership is great and strong, and we really enjoy everything that we do together. And I think we complement each other pretty well. I'm also an entrepreneur, something I was a little surprised that I dove into, and it was very scary when it first happened, when I first decided to do it, but I love it. There is not a better fit for me with my personality and my desires. And then I'm also the first lady at K-State, which is quite an honor. And I'm very proud to be here and be a part of this community and culture. So thank you so much for having us here. So my journey, how did it start? Well, my work journey actually started at Purdue University in the business office, which I learned very quickly sitting in a cubicle doing Excel spreadsheets all day long was not for me. So I took a wine appreciation class at Purdue, which I know we have it here too, and loved it. I thought it was great. And when I was looking to leave the business office, my coworker is like, hey, look at this wine job that just opened up. That sounds like something you'd really enjoy. And was actually got the opportunity to be hired as the marketing and public relations director for all the wineries in Indiana, which, yes, there are wineries in Indiana. And yes, the wine is good. And one of the wineries is actually now the 24th largest winery in the United States. So started a wine and food festival in Indianapolis for the industry, became a certified wine judge after 2.5 years of training. And that's actually how Rich and I met, was at the, we hosted the second largest wine competition in the US. And I was doing all the media and public relations for the event. He was tossing pizza for all the judges that we fly in from around the world. And his assistant could not make it that night, got stuck in a plane and couldn't help him prepare all the pizzas. And they said, would anybody like to help Dr. Linton make pizzas? And I was like, I'll help. So that's how it all started. And then I went through the judge training. I became a judge. I loved it, did the wine job, and I stepped down when we had kids. So shifted into a completely other role, got into mindfulness certification, did all of that to help try to be the best mom possible and the most calm mom possible, which for those of you that are parents can relate. Actually had one of our children that suffered school trauma at an early age. This is very triggering for me even now. And did a huge neuroscience dive for about 10 years, very intense. Researched about 40 schools in Raleigh, toured them all, trying to find the right fit. And then went back and got a yoga teacher certification thinking, well, if I learn how to be calm even more and how to help my kids be calm more, like we'll all be on a better page, which is very true. Then, as we were finding more settlement, and I was looking at getting back to work, and everybody said, oh, you should go back into the wine industry, which was great. It's an incredible industry, lots of fun. Your meetings are in Sonoma, in Napa, and I got to go to France. I mean, it was great. But I got to help people, but what I was doing was I was helping people have fun, which was awesome. But what I really realized was I wanted to help people feel better about their lives and live a better life. So I went back to school and got certified to be an advanced ADHD life coach, and executive function coach. So I wanted to go over through this winding journey and all these different areas that I've had experience, my key takeaways. So in coaching, at the end of every session, my last question is, what's a key takeaway for today? You know, what are you taking away from this session? So that's what I want to share. My motivations. What are the driving forces in my life? This was pretty easy for me. Family and friends first. It motivates me, keeps me grounded, keeps me excited. Rich and the kids and our support here in Manhattan and our support in previous places we've lived, an extended family. Helping others. Like I said, there is nothing more that I love than helping others. And it's funny, Rich and I joke, he grew up in a super competitive family in sports and stuff. And I'm the person who, when we were in North Carolina and I joined the tennis team in the neighborhood, when I won, I felt horrible for the person that lost on the other side. I was like, I'm glad I won, but I feel really bad for you. So helping people is a good fit for me. That brings me joy to help others. Love of learning. I learned that obviously through the list I just showed you, I love to continually learn. So I would think of myself as a scanner. So I'll do something for 6 months or a year, try a new activity, a new sport, and then I kind of get out of it what I want, and I'm ready to move on to something else and try something new, which also fits in perfectly with the ADHD mindset. Travel. Travel motivates me. I love to travel. I love to expose our kids to travel. I love to see new cultures and learn about how people think and what they do. This picture here is from a trip to Copenhagen. So when Lily was a freshman in high school, Chris, we had pulled him out of middle school to homeschool to be able to customize his experience. So Lily was taking geography. So I said, well, we'll do geography with Chris at the same time, world geography. And then the culmination at the end of the school year was we took them to the Baltic Sea and we went to 5 different countries and brought the geography and the history to life to kind of pull it all together. So they both got to experience that together. So shifting to choices. When I think about choices, what I've learned is we control a lot more than we think. And this has taken me a long time through all these different jobs. So I wanted to share with you, what choices do I consciously make now on a daily basis? And I talk to myself all the time in my head. I'm continually coaching myself as I'm coaching other people too. But I think a lot about, who do I want to be? And when I think about that, it's not a forever decision. It evolves, it changes. But focusing on my who and not somebody else's expectations of who I want to be. Who is in my inner circle? This was a big lesson for me that took me 45 years to figure out. As a people pleaser and wanting everybody to like me and being very sensitive if I feel like people don't like me, which are also all ADHD traits. It took me a long time to figure out I can actually control who I allow into my inner circle. And when I am more cautious about that and more thoughtful about that, I'm a much happier person. So when I structured this business, my coaching business, I have a handful of other coaches that I keep very close. And we exchange ideas and we work, but they're people that get me and that I get them, and it works really well. I get to choose how I spend my time because I've designed it that way. So I have a lot of commitments I do about probably 10 to 30 hours a week of university stuff. I have a son homeschooling. I run my own business, personal stuff. I started taking a pottery class, which I love. But I'm now very, very specific about how I carve out my time and what I allow to take my time. How I choose to show up. We are in control of how we choose to show up for certain things and resetting our mindset. I was just laughing this week with my college roommate. We're the two that send the Instagram reels back and forth all the time. And I sent her this Instagram reel of this little girl dancing in front of her mirror to this song, like pumping herself up. And I wrote my friend and I said, this is exactly what I do if we have an evening event coming up and I'm tired from the day. And I'm like, okay, got to change my mindset. So I play, don't know if you're familiar with Hamilton, but I play Satisfied from Hamilton. And while I'm getting ready, that's what I'm listening to pump myself up, to get ready to go down and do the event. So core values. In my coaching training, what we learned is this is pretty much the source of everything. So there is an assessment you can do online, and it's called Values in Action. And the website is viacharacter.org. It's free. You can do it. Your top 5 to 7 values are your signature strengths. So those signature strengths, if they are not present in your daily life, it's fascinating. You'll notice that you're usually not satisfied, whether it's work or home or school or whatever, and you're not fulfilled. So the core values for me, the top ones, honesty. When I was going through a really challenging time in life, and I was meeting with a mentor coach of mine who was based in New York City, and talking to him about the story and then how things were finally shifting, he goes, isn't that ironic that when you were finally honest with yourself about what was going on and the changes you needed to make, everything switched to what you needed and everything fell into place. And that was eye-opening to me. So now when I choose to get involved in something or choose to bring people into my inner circle, honesty is the number one thing for me. If I feel like I cannot be honest or I'm not comfortable in the space, I'll still participate if I have to, but that's not going to be my inside thing. Integrity, hands down. Ethics, morality, integrity, never questioned. In our household, that's what we stand for across the board, all of us. Kindness, just being kind to others. Understanding, I think through this whole coaching journey and through our ups and downs with all the school stuff and everything we've been to over the years and moving kids to different states when they really don't want to come. And what I've learned is you never know what the other person is dealing with. You never know what they've experienced, what they have going on in their life, who's hurting in their life. Be kind. And that's something I try to follow through every day. Fairness. This is a big thing with our kids. You're not being fair. Fairness does not always mean equal. So each person, each kid at different times needs different things. So being fair is important, but being fair for who that particular person is also important. So I call these my steel rods. And I heard this when I went to a neuroscience talk when the kids were little, and I was sort of panicking that, how do you be the best mom possible? And which there is no best mom possible. There is no perfect. It does not exist. But this gentleman said, and I'll never forget it, what are your steel rods? Like, what do you stand for no matter what in any situation? And these are my steel rods. Oh, wait, I got to tell you about this picture quick. So I added this picture, and this was when Rich and I were in Hawaii. And Rich and I went once by ourselves. And then we went like 2 years later, and we took the kids back to show them because we really liked it. And when I was putting this picture in and I showed our son, Chris, he says, well, which time in Hawaii was that? I said, I think that was the time that you guys were with us. He said, I don't think so, Mom. You and Dad look so happy and rested. So beliefs. What have I discovered and figured out through these experiences that are things I truly, truly believe? These are also what I think about on a daily basis for myself and also when I'm working with others. So limiting beliefs are a really big thing. Getting rid of beliefs that we place on ourselves that are holding us back, right? I'm not ever going to fall asleep tonight. Well, is that really true? Probably not. I could never run a marathon. Is that really true? If you broke it down step by step, quarter mile by quarter mile, I worked my way up to it. I actually ran the Chicago Marathon when Chris was 2 and Lily was 4, and it was a huge accomplishment that when I first signed up for it, I had run another race with some friends. I think Rich was actually with me too. We ran a mini marathon, so 13 miles. And they do it really well. After you run the race, they have tables set up to sign up for the next race. Has anybody ever heard of the runner's high? So you get done with the race, you're like, yes, I got a medal. You're all ready to go. They have a table. My college roommate and I mean, we were moms by then. We're like, we could totally do it. We signed up for the Chicago Marathon and had to train January through the whole spring in Indiana for the Chicago Marathon. But you know what? We did it. And we shut down that limiting belief. So what I believe is true, I want to share some of my favorite ones that I've discovered and are a huge help for me. When we stop listening to the shoulds, life gets better. You should be a doctor because everybody else in your family is. You should, a big one for me was, you should work in an office because that's what people do when they get out of college and get a job. Letting go of the shoulds can change your life. This is one of my favorite quotes about shoulds. Thou shalt not should on oneself or on others. My cousin's therapist told her this, and I love it. If you hear yourself giving yourself a should or a limiting belief, I should be able to get through my to-do list that has 50 things on it. Push back on that, right? Really? Should you? Probably not. I should be able to save more money. I should be climbing this exact staircase to get from A to B to C because that's what everybody tells me I should do. Pushing back on that, thinking differently on that has transformed my life and how I feel as a person and satisfied and balanced. But it takes work. I still should myself and push back on it. What else do I believe is true? What you pay attention to grows. What you think, you become. And this is not made up foo-foo stuff. This is neuroscience. When we run these pathways over and over and over, telling ourselves either we can or we can't, you're exactly right. So what you pay attention to is where your energy flows, and that is who you become. So when I started working really, really hard, challenging that other chatter in my head about what I could or couldn't do, is when I was really able to move forward. The power of the pause can be transformational. If we can figure out how to stop and just even think about what we're thinking, that gives us enough time to react, right? Create the awareness, add the pause. Because when we bring awareness and we challenge those thoughts back, that's when we change. Because when people first told me, they're like, you should totally go into something related to ADHD and helping other families. It's your passion. You talk to all of us about it all the time when we have questions and help us out. And they were probably like, please go work with somebody else. But at first I was like, no way, I can't do that. Like I already spent money on an undergrad and 2 master's degrees and all this. I can't spend all this money to go back to school again and then start my own business. But when I took the time to pause and really think about what do I really love and what would I love to do? I'd love to make change and help people live an easier path, especially with their families and kids and understanding themselves and believing in themselves. People do well when they can. And the reason I put an otter on this is because this is a quote that a psychologist, I really respect his work. This is his main thing is kids do well when they can. People do well when they can. Parents do well when they can. Sometimes we just can't. You know, coworkers do well when they can. But if everybody's had an extremely hard, stressful day and you're functioning at the top of your stress level, your window of tolerance, it's very easy to go over that, right? But this otter is to signify when somebody's not doing well, we need to swim upstream and figure out why. Because it's not the behavior we need to pay attention to, the end behavior. That's just the reaction to something that happened upstream. So swimming upstream to figure out why is this going on? And that goes back to that whole piece in the journey that you never know what's going on in somebody else's life. Sometimes we just need to ask. What else do I believe? Life is a winding journey with growth and insight at every turn. I love that I don't always know what the next chapter is going to be. So I think of life like a novel, right? If I'm in a bad chapter, I try to really just tell myself, if this were a book, we would expect a bad chapter, right? But after the bad chapter is usually a good chapter. So the hope is that I'm going to come out on the other side in a better way, because none of us has probably ever read a really good novel that sticks with us and it was just good all the way along, right? There's always like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that. Oh, wow. Okay, we're back. That's a part of our lives. That's how we get better. That's how we grow. So what's my hope for you? Kind of the takeaway I would hope you might think about is taking time for some self-discovery to figure out who you want to be. Who do you really want to be? When you let go of some of the expectations of who you think you should be. Question your limiting beliefs. Just start having the good guy on the other shoulder that questions back when you hear yourself saying a limiting belief. Well, that's the way we've always done it. Maybe there's a better way, right? Change is hard. Yeah, sure is. But usually that's how we grow. And you be you, because everybody else is already taken. So thanks for joining me. And we're happy to take questions and stuff if anybody has any. Yeah.
What is mindfulness exactly and how is that applied?
So the training that I did in mindfulness was for schools, so for smaller kids. But the way I use mindfulness now is actually to help. You can do it in multiple ways. I do the Calm app, and I do it to regulate my breathing and just help me kind of calm down and reset. It can calm the body. If you take 3 to 5 deep breaths, so you breathe in, you hold it for a second or two, and breathe out longer than you breathe in, within 3 to 5 breaths, you can re-regulate your nervous system. So as a coworker that might be upset, or a student stressed going into a test, or your children are frustrating you, literally within 3 to 5 breaths, you can calm yourself down. But I also think of mindfulness a little differently now too, because I think some people get worried that they can't sit still and calm their brain long enough to be called mindfulness. I think mindfulness can be anything that helps you calm down. So for some people, it might be baking a cake. For some people, it might be taking a walk or riding a bike or reading a book. It's whatever helps you come to your place of peace, is how I view it, really.
Here, we're going to use the mic so our folks on Zoom can hear too.
Thank you for the very inspirational talk. I think I got most of your points, but one I couldn't quite put my head around is the should rules.
Mm-hmm.
Because it seems to me to make everything else work, you have to apply the should. I should be fair. Even running a marathon, I should be able to be a wine expert. I can do this. I mean, it seems like it's the inspiration behind all your other things. Can you explain what I'm missing here?
Yeah, I think when the shoulds are coming from cultural or family or work expectations, right? And you're ingesting that as you're a failure if you're not doing this, right? That's different than telling yourself, I should put a plan in place to run a marathon, right? What I'm talking more about is what I deal a lot with ADHD brains is we're very good at creating to-do lists that there is no realistic way we're ever going to get it done. But we think we should be able to. We think we should be able to have a full-time job, complete the to-do list, take care of the kids, do this and that, and it's not realistic. So it's questioning when you're feeling those cultural shoulds, sometimes they're not true. A lot of times they're not true. Yeah.
I think on the first slide, we saw your 2 master's degrees. Could you just go over your degrees?
Sure.
Where they're from?
Sure. So I grew up from middle school on in Northern Indiana. And I went to undergrad at Indiana University. So I double majored in marketing and management and double minored in psych and soc. Then I went to go work at the other university. I went to go work at Purdue. And it was funny because in our house, my brother was a Purdue grad and I was IU. And I always told him, I'm like, Purdue knows where to hire the good people. So then I went to Purdue and started working in the business office. And that's when I applied to the master's program. It was a dual master's through the College of Agriculture and the Krannert College of Business. So there were 26 of us from all over the world. It was one of the first cohorts to do these online things that are now so common. 26 of us from the agricultural industry that came in from all over the world. And we got an MBA from the Krannert School of Business, and we also got a Master's of Science from AgEcon in agribusiness. It was fabulous. We spent 2 weeks 2 weeks each semester on campus together. And then our last semester, we spent 2 weeks in Wageningen over in Holland and studied at their university with their MBA students. It's really neat. Yeah.
Thank you. You talked a little bit at the very beginning about how you even gave up some of the wine career when you had children. And looking around, there's a lot of parents that I know in this audience, moms, dads. And can you talk a little bit about how you were able to balance being the good parent, or whatever that might mean,
Mhm.
as teachers are saying, bring this to school, come to a party, do this. And you're also thinking, I'm supposed to be at my job, and trying to figure out that, well, is my family higher ranking than my job? If I want to move forward in my career, where does that fall? But my family is what you might feel is more important at that point. How do you balance that? And how did you make that transitions?
Yeah. I want to validate, first of all, that that's extremely hard. The expectations placed on parents, especially the primary caregiver, if they're working outside of the home, is an insane amount of work trying to keep all the balls in the air. So when we ran up to that decision, at the time, Rich was traveling about 80% of the time. I was traveling about 60% of the time with the wine job. And my biggest concern was somebody's going to be missing out. It's either me shifting away from the job if we're going to keep Rich on the path that, we had talked about going on. Or it was going to be the kids missing out because they had parents that just couldn't be there. Because we were gone so much in what we were doing. So I stepped back, and it was a hard decision. I loved my time with the kids, but to be honest, I still think about, where would I be had I stayed in that part of the race. But now coming full circle and starting my own business, I feel like I'm in the place I was meant to be. I'm completely satisfied doing what I do. For everybody, it's a very individualized decision. And I think that's partly the expectation piece too, is we feel we should be room parent. We should be involved in every class party. We should take our kid to every weekend birthday party and take gift bags and this and that. Well, should you really? I mean, it's really reining in thinking about if that dual career is the thing that you want to commit to, what else do we need to take off the plate to bring balance? Because we don't have to be doing everything to be looking a certain way to everybody else on the outside. We have to balance our plate to what works for us. Yeah.
So we have a couple questions on Zoom. Annalise Hall asks, how do you go about taking a career risk that is not supported by peers?
That's hard. I mean, jumping off that cliff takes a lot of courage, and you don't always know it's going to be a win. What I would say is if you were to sit down and really look at, for example, when I work with clients, the very first thing we do is build a strengths toolbox. So we do that values and action assessment. We talk about their interests. We talk about their natural talents. And we figure out, what do they love to do? And is what you're doing what you really love to do? What would happen if you took that jump? And then I would ask, what's the worst case scenario? Like, if everything blew up, what would that look like? What's the best case scenario? If everything went exactly like you planned, where might you be in 5 years? And then I would say, what's the most likely scenario if you take this risk? And thinking through those components. You're welcome.
Got a question up here.
Yeah.
Hi, this is university. All our focus should be on how to help students matriculate through their experience here. With ADHD being such a prevalent issue for our students, what recommendations do you make for us, those of us in the classroom and those of us helping students through other means, to get through something that takes so much cognitive effort?
Yeah. So when you have ADHD, oftentimes you're working 2 or 3 times as many amount of hours to do the same amount of work. And the ADHD brain is an interest-based brain. So it literally does not light up unless you are interested in something. And it's also, the dopamine receptors are different. So if something else catches your attention, you're off and running, not on purpose. So my hope as a university is that we continue to, one, reduce the stigma of mental health, ADHD, any of these things, because it is no different than having something else going on, right? One leg that's different, a broken arm, whatever. It's no different. And if we can connect, and I know a lot of classes have a large amount of students, but figuring out ways to create more connection to actually understand. Because if somebody's falling behind or not showing up to class, or they seem angry and overwhelmed, that's the otter. It's time to swim upstream and figure out why. Because all kids want to do well. No kid wants to be the one being yelled at. No kid wants to be the one failing every assignment. It's a horrible feeling. Makes me want to cry just to even think about it. Nobody wants to be in that position. So the more we can work on what structures and strategies can we put in place that would not only benefit ADHDers, but benefit students across the board to help them continue to move forward and grow.
First of all, we're thrilled to have you and Rich at K-State, and I appreciate you. I always tell Rich, and she's heard me say this before, that she's the bonus we got when he came to K-State. But there's several people in this room that know me. I'm living what you're talking about. And one time my kids sat down and when they're eating lunch, how many times they had shaded the conversation? It was like 30 times. So, but I'm a success story. You got to deal with it and move on. And I appreciate it. It's not a mental condition. It's something you can work with and conquer. So I'm going to ask you, Rich told me to ask you a good question, but what was your biggest surprise when you came to K-State that you didn't know before you got here?
Oh, if I were to give my first response that just popped into my head following the honesty piece, going to the first football game and seeing the Wabash Cannonball, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever. Because at other universities, the student section might be, a lot of the basketball games, the student section is one section big. Our daughter is finishing her second year at UNC Chapel Hill, and she has never gotten a basketball ticket. But to see the number of kids and the support, and then the Wabash was unreal. Yeah.
Do you think you were, don't take this wrong, less efficient on things you did before you knew how your mind worked? Like, you seem to have got a lot done. And so, yeah, it's just hard to get things done when you're distracted on a lot of things. So do you think you manage things and did that change as far as what you think?
Oh, for
accomplished?
sure, for sure. And I can give one specific example. I don't think he's here. Is Mike Finnegan here? I don't think he is today. He's in class. One of the things I've implemented from a conversation with Mike Finnegan, who's a professor here in the leadership school, is a big thing, especially with ADHD, but for anybody, is managing your energy. So there's a great Harvard Business Review article called Manage Your Energy, Not Your Time. And Mike and I were talking about this, and he said he sets up his whole entire day based on when he knows he has the most energy. So he knows he can be most focused and energized first thing in the morning. So he does all of his office work or projects in the morning. And then when he gets drained from his energy, because he's extroverted, so he gets energy from other people, he teaches class and does all of his interactions in the afternoon. So it pumps him back up. Because a big thing, especially with ADHD, is we've got to keep that dopamine coming up. So when we do something we're not interested in, that dopamine, it dives down, then we got to get it back up. I've changed my entire structure based on that conversation with Mike. And now I do all of my coaching in the afternoons when I'm starting to feel tired. And when I get off at 4 or 5 o'clock, I am ramped up and ready to go. I'm so excited to see the progress in the people. That's what gives me energy. Yeah.
Thank you for your talk. It's beautiful. I appreciated the focus on your values and how that is a call back to take a step back and pay attention what is important to me and if that is part of my daily life. Any thoughts about how you help your kids identify and develop their values, as well as here being teachers and mentors to students? How can we better inspire and push students to identify those values in themselves?
And I like the way you're wording that by saying, how do we help them identify it rather than how do we get them to do it or think, right? So with our kids, I've always talked about those steel rods ever since I went to that talk, is that what are your steel rods? As Lintons, this is what we stand for, but you're going to need to decide what you stand for. And then as they've gotten a little older, I've definitely taken more of a mentor role as a parent, in the sense of, if they come to me with a challenge or I see a question, my response would be more, would you like to hear my thoughts on that? And then it would be, if I were in that situation, I might choose to do this because of this. Or, if you decide to do that, you need to understand what the potential, consequences might be, natural consequences, right? To help, they have to uncover those steel rods themselves. As a parent, we so badly want them to be the people we want them to be and know they can be. But we also have to be able to allow them to come into that on their own. Same with students, right? It's providing that structure and especially in a classroom, the expectations in the classroom up front and at the beginning, and then coaching them as needed to get there.
We have another question on Zoom.
So on Zoom, Mark Hansard asked the question, do you have a faith or religious belief that factor into your life or career?
So I term it more as a spiritual belief that I believe people are good people. I believe that people are doing the best that they can. I believe that sometimes we all make choices that maybe we wish we wouldn't have made or were hard. But it's knowing who you are inside of yourself. I'm very much focused on internal strength rather than placing that strength externally. You have to know, this goes back to the steel rods too. You have to know who you are and what you stand for. And I think that's an individualistic belief.
I think we have time for one more question. Thank you.
So I guess this would actually come off your belief, as I've actually been doing some own deep dive into like intractable personality styles, like people that with certain personality characteristics or disorders are intractable. They're not going to change. How do you recommend that? You know, you talked about kindness, you talked about those kinds of things, but yet there are people who are actively out to destroy the
Toxic.
happiness of others. Yes, toxic.
Yeah.
How do you recommend dealing with those in a colleague or a student or those kinds of situations, especially when it's not one of those things that you can go to HR and say, you know, this person is doing these things?
So again, I think it's just validating that that's a challenging position to be in, especially if you're not able to change the environment to get out of the situation. So I dealt with this at one time in my life and worked with my mentor coach on it. And what I actually came up with is, I have it taped inside my medicine cabinet, a picture of like a person sitting peacefully, almost like a yoga pose, with a bubble over them. And I call that my bubble of peace. And what I work really hard on, and because it's in my medicine cabinet, I see it every day, is I'm very visual. So I think about, how do I not allow those arrows to penetrate my bubble of peace? Right? So you may not be able to completely be away from those people, but what you can control is your reaction to that. Is that easy? Oh, no, not at all. And does it take years and years of continual practice? Yes, but each day you get a little bit better of protecting yourself. So if we think about life as control circles, so in that situation, I would be thinking about, what can I control? And what can't I control? So you can't change what you can't control. But if you focus on those pieces that you can control, that's where your power is going to be.
Let's give Sally a big round of applause.
Thank you.
I don't know about you all, but I appreciate the opportunity to learn more about your story, while you also made me do a lot of introspection and reflection at the same time. And that is a gift. That is a gift. To end on a light note, I can't believe we didn't get this question, but do you have a favorite bottle of wine you'd recommend to us?
Oh. So what I always say to that is, I think of wine like art. So what I like, you may not like, right? What my taste buds like, your taste buds might hate. But if I were to pick a style that I like, I actually love New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, because Rich and I, before the kids were born, we did a sabbatical and we lived in New Zealand for 4 months. And that was when I was in the wine industry. And can I tell a real quick story? Okay. We were there. It was like our third day. We got completely lost. We had bought a car that was stick shift, because everybody said you have to buy a car, which we drove a stick shift, but not when you're driving on the opposite side of the car. So Rich would steer and I would shift, and we got completely lost. And we spilled pretzels we were arguing with each other, and we see this guy walking down the road outside of Auckland, New Zealand, with an Indiana University sweatshirt on, which is where my undergrad's from. I was like, he'll help us. So we pull up. I'm like, I'm a Hoosier too, and can you please help us? And He was the marketing director for the third largest winery in New Zealand. And he set us up with all the wineries in the whole country, the whole 4 months we were there. And my parents came to visit and we got to stay in the media house in the vineyard in the Marlborough region. And my dad goes, well, no wonder why you like this job.
See, a beautiful story at the end. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much for joining us. We invite you to share your stories on your walk back together with your colleagues, and be on the lookout. We'll have 2 more What Matters to Me and Why later this semester. So hope to see you there.